Monday Night Raw starts off with Seth Rollins. He ends up cutting a promo. He ends up mentioning Braun Breaker, ends up mentioning Braun Breaker betraying him, mentioning the World Heavyweight title, mentioning how he doesn't have that around his waist, mentions Braun Breaker costing him the match against Gunther, ends up mentioning Roman having the title now, ends up mentioning that it's all due to the fault of Braun Breaker. He ends up calling out Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker comes out. He wonders why Braun Breaker ended up attacking him, why he betrayed him. He tried to help Braun Breaker, and he's wondering why Braun Breaker betrayed him. Braun Breaker responds back. He ends up saying that it didn't benefit him or Bronson Reed at all, that Seth was just using him, that they was just his lackeys, they was background characters, that they didn't really matter, and that Seth Rollins was the only person benefiting from the vision, that every time he needed them, that he was just using them to benefit his own gain, and that he wasn't really teaching them anything. Basically, that the vision didn't benefit nobody but Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins then responds back, ends up saying that he sees the potential. He sees, Braun Breaker being a main eventer soon in the future. But the reason why he ended up putting him underneath his wing and the reason why he waited was because he knows that Braun Breaker just isn't ready yet due to him not being that smart. Braun Breaker feels the opposite. Braun Breaker feels like he is ready, that he has what it takes, that he would have got to the main event with or without Seth Rollins. He was already on his way to be a main eventer, that Seth Rollins blocked his path to being a main eventer, and that Seth Rollins ruined his momentum. Seth Rollins feels the opposite. He feels like Braun Breaker isn't ready for that position and that he still needs some more time in order to be able to get to that main event level. This was a great segment. I thought this was great from start to finish. I don't know what people are expecting from Braun Breaker, and his promo ability is kind of getting ridiculous. For me personally, I think Braun Breaker's a solid promo. I thought this was solid, but people are saying this was bad. I don't understand, what are you guys wanting from Braun? I really just think that since Braun Breaker is related to the Steiner family, that you guys want him to be similar to like his uncle and stuff, but it's like he's not them. Like, this was a good promo. I don't care what anyone says. This was a good promo from Braun Breaker. Good back and forth. They're going to have a match at Backlash. Very interested to see how this wins, because you have the young up-and-coming guy who believes he's ready, believe he's made for the moment, feels, like his momentum got derailed, while Seth Rollins, on the other hand, is the older veteran who's still trying to prove that he still got it to prove his point that Braun Breaker did need him in order to elevate to that main event scene. So this is going to be very interesting. Very interested to see how this match plays out. I can easily see shenanigans, but I can also see this just being a straight-up one-on-one match. Who wins that match? I really don't know, because I can see it going either way. I can see Seth Rollins wins, prove it point, Braun Breaker becomes more frustrated, more angry to eventually overcome Seth, or you can have Braun Breaker win, prove his point, Seth Rollins he probably could cheat in the match, whatever, injury or whatever, and then Seth Rollins eventually try to get his win back. I can see it going either way, but I am loving what they're doing with this story so far. We end up getting an Intercontinental Championship match between Penta versus Rusev. This was a really good match. Really enjoyed it. Really solid match from beginning to end. Penta, of course, does retain the Intercontinental Championship. Ringside, Ethan Page was watching the match. After the match, Rusev attacks Penta. Ethan Page tries to help Rusev, but Rusev wasn't accepting his help until Penta ended up getting the upper hand, attacking Rusev, but then Ethan Page ends up jumping Penta. Then they start jumping Penta together. Javon Evans then comes for the save, and it looks like next week we're going to get a tag team match between Penta, Javon Evans versus Rusev, and Ethan Page. So it looks like we're going to get that tag match, which I did predict last week. So I do like what they're doing. I like the story they're having. I like having all four of these guys in the Intercontinental Championship picture. This reminds me somewhat similar to what they was doing with Andrade, Carmelo Hayes, and LA Knight for the U.S. Championship. It kind of reminds me of that, so I do like the story that they're going here. And I think it's good for all guys, because no guy really gets like derailed, or no one really lose any credibility in this scenario if they lose. Like, it only goes up from here. So I really like what they're doing here. Plus, having these four guys compete for the IC title, could put on banger matches. I really like what they're doing here. I like the mid-card scene for Raw right now. I wish we could get that for SmackDown to a degree, but it looks like they're going to be doing the Trick and Sammy stuff for a while. But nonetheless, I like what they're doing. I like Javon, Penta, Rusev, and Ethan Page all in that ecosystem for that IC title, so that should be very interesting. So I'm actually excited to see what's next for this entire thing. Afterwards, we end up getting Becky Lynch. She ends up cutting a promo. She basically ends up mentioning, her accolades, mentioning being a 3-time women's champion, mentioning beating AJ Lee. Then she ends up mentioning that she understands what the fans want. She understands the fans want her to be a fighting champion, want her to defend her championship. So she ends up saying that she's going to do an open challenge, which I thought was very surprising, because I'm shocked that a character like Becky Lynch is doing open challenges. That was kind of weird to me, but she ends up doing an open challenge, and Io Sky answers the call. Becky Lynch ends up belittling and demeaning Io Sky ends up basically saying that she's not what she had in mind. She wanted someone who's more credible, someone who's worthy of the opportunity, that she wanted to face one of the best in the world, and Io Sky is that. She ends up saying that is your friend Rhea coming, because clearly that she's the better between the two, that you was clearly holding her down. She eventually ends up calling Io Sky Marty Jannetty, which I thought was hilarious, that Rhea Ripley is Shawn Michaels and Io Sky is Marty, which I thought was funny. Then eventually Io Sky attacks Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch tries to run away, but Adam Pearce ends up making the match official. The match was good. This was a really good match. Towards the end of the match, though, Asuka interferes in the match, costs Io Sky the match. Becky Lynch hits a manhandle slam, picks up the victory, retains the IC championship. Then you end up getting Io Sky, puts her in the Asuka lock, if I'm not mistaken, make Io Sky tap out, and then that's the end of the segment there. So they're continuing the story between Asuka and Io Sky. The match is confirmed at Backlash, so that should be very interesting. That should be a great match. I'm assuming that has to be the end of the feud, because there's no need to continue that feud after this, especially without Kairi Sane. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe WWE pulls a R-Truth situation where they bring her back at Backlash. Who knows? They could do that. But yeah, without Kairi Sane, this feud shouldn't continue much longer, because the whole payoff, in my opinion, was Kairi Sane turning on Asuka. So if Kairi Sane is going to come back, then this should be the end of the feud at Backlash. Now, I actually wouldn't mind Io Sky dethroning Becky Lynch, because I do think Becky Lynch does need to be in the main event scene. I think she's done everything she could for that women's mid-card title. I do think it's time to move on. Even though I'm not the biggest Io Sky fan, I still like Io Sky. Plus, I could easily see them doing similar to what they did with Carmelo Hayes for the U.S. Championship, have her do a bunch of open challenges, defend the championship consistently. I can easily see them going that route. So I'm actually fine with Io Sky beating Becky Lynch in this scenario. Plus, this gives Io Sky something to do that isn't in the main event scene, because I'm assuming they're going to run the Judgment Day storyline in that main event scene. So if you're not going to have Io Sky eventually become world champion, the IC title is a good place for her to elevate the IC title. That way the IC title doesn't lose any credibility. It still has a main event star, because as much as I hate to say it, let's just be honest, if anyone else, not like Becky Lynch, Liv Morgan, any like top star like that isn't holding that championship, we know what WWE is going to do with that championship. They're not going to book it properly. So someone like Io Sky gives me a bit of faith, but to be fair, her world title reigns aren't booked that well either. So it could go either way, but nonetheless, I think Io Sky will be a perfect candidate to dethrone Becky Lynch. So I hope that after the Asuka feud that she does eventually dethrone Becky Lynch. We end up getting Obafemi versus Grayson Waller. It was a quick segment where Grayson Waller was trying to get an opportunity. He ends up mentioning Obafemi's name. Obafemi ends up overhearing him, so he ends up wanting a match. He demolishes Grayson Waller. Obafemi does, he ends up getting on the microphone, cuts a promo. He basically ends up saying that, look, he wants to climb the top of the mountain. He wants to get his opportunity, but he understands that everything seems to already be booked right now, that no one's doing open challenges. The main event scene seem already busy right now. So in order to keep his momentum to eventually get to the top of the mountain, he's going to be doing open challenges. So he wants any wrestler who feels like that they feel that can defeat him, wants them to come out and have a match with him on a weekly basis. So we're going to be having an Obafemi open challenge. I actually like this idea, because right now Obafemi doesn't really have a feud, and there isn't any wrestler right now that all the wrestlers that would be perfect for Oba to feud with are injured right now. Bronson Reed would have been a perfect opponent for Obafemi to dethrone. Braun Strowman, he got released. Sheamus is injured. There are people right now on the roster where it would have been great for him to feud with, but he doesn't have no one to feud with that will really benefit him right now. And there's other people that would have kind of worked, like Penta would have worked, but the problem with Penta is that he's a face, so it's like there's no one on the Raw roster right now that will really elevate Obafemi right now, so you can't ruin his momentum by him just not being on TV or not him having matches. So you still need him to appear weekly. So the open challenge is a good idea for him to keep his momentum, keep him fresh, keep him having opponents, and keep fans still, have him in their minds. So I think this is a good idea, because all the people that he could potentially have just a regular feud with, they're not around right now. They're either injured, released, whatever. So I think this is a good idea, and I'm actually excited to see what comes of this open challenge. We end up getting some Judgment Day drama. We end up getting a moment between Liv Morgan and Roxanne Perez. They end up going back to the moment between Liv and Roxanne before Stephanie Valkyrie attacked them on the road to WrestleMania, where they was mentioning Finn Balor. Basically, Liv Morgan's basically saying that, look, we're a family, that they're not like Finn Balor. Finn Balor betrayed the family, put himself first, and that hopefully she understands. It seems like Roxanne Perez is on the side of the Judgment Day, on the side of Liv Morgan. You end up getting a moment where Liv Morgan leaves. Then you end up getting Finn Balor sneaking into the clubhouse, basically trying to warn Roxanne Perez, but Roxanne Perez it basically ends up saying that she sides with the Judgment Day, and Finn Balor ends up leaving. So it looks like they're teasing a potential babyface turn for Roxanne Perez, which I don't mind. My only issue is that based off WWE Triple H history with the Judgment Day, we know that this whole babyface turn stuff and then potentially feuding isn't going to happen until WrestleMania 44. So I'm not going to get my hopes up. I would love a babyface Roxanne, especially if it leads to her winning a world title. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm just not going to get my hopes up because based off history has shown me that when they do stuff like this with the Judgment Day, it takes a million years for them to finally pull the trigger. Like, so I'm not really going to get my hopes up. I'm just going to say, let's see how this plays out. But I'm not going to get my hopes up for this because, again, this could be really good or really boring and repetitive. It's no in between. It's either going to be great or it's going to be a very repetitive and boring couple of months to years when it comes to this. So I'm hoping it's great, but I'm not going to get my hopes up for this. But I am interested to see where this goes. They end up having a tag team match where Roxanne Perez ended up getting a crazy pop. She was getting cheered throughout the entire match between Roxanne versus Bayley and Lyra. They did pick up the victory. Now, to add context, she was in her hometown, so that does play a factor, but this could be a good thing, though, because originally with Carmelo Hayes, he wasn't getting any reaction, but the moment he went to Boston in his hometown, he ended up getting cheered. So and that continued throughout show after show after show. So I'm hoping this is the start of Roxanne continuing to get cheered for her to get over. I don't think she was not over with fans, but I do think she was in a low period where she didn't have much momentum because she was playing third fiddle to Raquel and Liv Morgan. If she continues to get over and over as a babyface, that can really elevate her in this Judgment Day storyline. Because I always thought Raquel would be the one to dethrone her, but if she gets over enough, it could potentially be the other way around where Roxanne comes out on top. So I'm actually very interested, and I hope that I hope she continues the momentum, and I hope that fans continue to cheer her. We finally end up getting the main event. Roman Reigns, he starts off cutting the promo. He basically ends up saying that, look, I elevated this title. I made this title prestigious. I'm the reason you niggas care about this title. That without me, this title is basically meaningless. That the reason they even made this title was to spite me and to basically because I was just that dominant basically. So I'm the reason why this title was important. I made it main event night 2, and he isn't wrong. Now, for me personally, the title always felt important to me. Just I get why people felt like this was a secondary title, but for me, that argument doesn't really work. It just really depends on who's holding. I felt like that title was more important than Cody Rhodes' title for the longest time due to Cody Rhodes' reign not being that great. But I do get what Roman is saying because it is a lot of people do feel that way about the World Heavyweight Championship. So I do understand what he's saying. Then you end up getting Jacob. He comes out. Jacob basically ends up saying, look, my mind didn't need to be changed. I already knew what I wanted, and I still want that title shot. Roman basically ends up saying that, look, bro, you're just not ready for this situation, that it would just be unfair for me to give you the title because that would just be nepotism, that you're just not made for the championship. You're not made for this opportunity. There was a moment where they was mentioning, how when he was in jail that Roman didn't call him, the Usos didn't call him, that the only person that called him up was Solo. That eventually led to Roman saying that he isn't ready for the opportunity, that he doesn't deserve the title shot. Jacob then chokes Roman out, starts choking him out, continue to choke him, and then he ends up picking up the world title, leaves it in the ring. Roman then agrees to the match. I like what they did. This was cool. Really enjoyed it. I like the back and forth between Roman and Jacob Fatu. I love Jacob Fatu attacking Roman. This is going to be very interesting. Roman isn't losing, but Jacob is a credible opponent to where I wouldn't be shocked if Roman lost. I just don't believe he's losing, especially this early in his title reign, because Roman is a character where he doesn't need a long reign, but it's hard for me to imagine him not having a long title reign. It's very weird because Roman is a character where people just assume he's going to lose it at SummerSlam. I wouldn't be shocked if he holds it till next year at WrestleMania. I don't think he needs to hold it that long. It just wouldn't shock me because Roman is a very weird character. He's very similar to Cody to a degree because whenever Cody holds a title, you expect him to hold it just for a full year. You just kind of expect that because that's kind of what they've been doing with Cody. Whenever Cody wins the world title, he holds it for a very long time. Similar to, Roman, we haven't had much history because he really just has that one title reign. But I just don't know how you go from 1,000+ days to just doing a 4-month reign. It's just very hard to see me seeing that, but it wouldn't shock me either. But overall, I enjoyed this segment overall. This show overall was great. This was a great Monday Night Raw. From top to bottom, I really have no complaints for this Raw. This was a great show. But you guys let me know your overall thoughts and opinions down below. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Make sure to hit the notification bell so don't miss any of my content. But yeah, that's it.